Hello and welcome to Free Friday Frights. I'm Mark Leslie, and I'm going to start with the first Free Friday Frights. Thanks for joining me today on this terrible snowy day where winter just doesn't want to seem to go away, at least in this part of the world. And I'm in Waterloo, Ontario. That's where I am doing this from. I'm going to be reading from this week's selection, and the selection you can actually read on markleslie.ca/Free Friday Frights. It'll be changed up and be available to read approximately for 24 hours. You can also, if you prefer not to read it online, you can download the digital chapbook Snowman Shivers, which is available on pretty much any online retailer. So you can read it on your Kindle, your Kobo, your Nook, on iBooks, etc., 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 for free if you prefer to read it. Now, today's story is in keeping with the season. Well, in keeping with the season that's supposed to be happening right now. And it is a tale called That Old Silk Hat They Found. It first appeared in book form in my collection One Hand Screaming, which was published in 2004, and then of course appears in that free digital chapbook called Snowman Shivers. It's basically a dark humor tale, and it's a look at what might actually happen if Frosty the Snowman were to actually happen. All right, so I'm just going to start by reading that right now. That old silk hat they found. A cool wind kisses me. Little by little, the sensation rises, becomes more real. The soft light breeze becomes an intense, encompassing cold. But the cold doesn't hurt me. It soothes me. It feels good, comfortable. Relaxed in the darkness, I realize that my eyes are closed. What am I saying? I realize for the first time that I have eyes. I open my eyes to see the world through some sort of charcoal gray lens. But despite the blurry gray haze, I can make out a white landscape and figures moving in the distance. Running and cavorting, their shouts are muffled. I can barely hear them. I can barely see. I can barely hear. But I do have life. It feels good. Knowing that I exist and that I can sense and feel is wonderful. I try to move, but I can't. I look down. No, I don't have legs, just this big round mass. I look to my sides. My arms are mere sticks. They flail uselessly in the wind. Who created me? Who gave me this cruel, cruel life? Was it those kids who frolic so freely and joyfully in the snow? It must have been. They're the only ones here. Can't they see what a horrid creature they have conjured? Can't they tell what a torture this life is that they have given me? Hey! A deep voice calls to me. Who is it that addresses me? Certainly not the children, for they're still ignoring me. The voice sounds much different, much clearer and closer than the voices of the children. My eyes scan the landscape. Hey, you, newcomer! Finally, my eyes spot the owner of the voice. He is one like me, off to my left. I can tell he's like me because instead of legs and feet, his bottom is a large white mass of snow. He's built like three large balls stacked upon one another. There's a scarf wrapped around his neck. He has dark lumps for eyes, a carrot nose, two sticks like mine bobbing in the wind, and several tiny stones in a line which form a horribly ironic grin. I try to respond, but I cannot make a sound. Don't even try to speak. You can't. They didn't give you a mouth, the other one says. They didn't give me a mouth? Feeble arms, no legs, no mouth. What evil creatures they must be. Why even bother to give me life then? Welcome to the world, Frosty. Frosty? Is that my name? Did they at least give me a name? I wonder, what is the name of my companion? In case you're wondering, my name's Frosty, too. For the most part, even though they do name us, we're all called Frosty at one time or another. I guess it's supposed to be a funny name for a snowman. But for the sake of personality, you can call me Old Timer. I've been alive for ages now. Can you believe that I'm 4 weeks old? Geez, where does the time go? Well, since you're new, I'll give you the lowdown. God, it's been so good to be able to talk to someone again. Do you know that I've been alone for almost 2 full weeks? Just then, a child runs up to Old Timer. Hey now! Old Timer says, get your paws off me! The child laughs and grabs at his nose. Yeah! Old Timer's scream cuts through my head. I can almost feel his pain as the child wrenches the nose free and runs laughing through the snow. Another child, upset, chases after him, determined to get the carrot back. Old Timer is quiet for a moment. I wonder if he's okay. I wonder if he's still alive. I wonder if they create us just to torture us. Stupid little brat, Old Timer says. The anguish is clear in his voice. I'm okay now. It hurts, but not so bad as I imagined it was for Sammy. Sammy, I wonder. Who is Sammy? Sammy was my last companion. He stood not 4 feet from where you are now. And if you think I'm old, he'd been around from the beginning of time. He was the one who explained to me all about what being a snowman means. Do you want to hear it? Well, since you can't speak, then you can't object, and you're going to have to hear it. If you haven't already guessed, humans created us. We're merely created for their pleasure. And from what little I have learned of humans, they do this quite often. They create all kinds of creatures merely to use as they see fit and to dispose of in a likewise manner. Sammy told me stories of them breeding creatures merely to eat or to be kept as what are called pets. I guess we're like pets, except of course we can't do much more than just stand here. At least their other pets have freedom to roam around. See this yellow stain at the bottom of my right side? It's a little gift from one of their pets called Spike. But what nerve, eh? What gall to automatically assume ownership of another species, to create another being and then to destroy it for their own pleasure. Old Timer is silent again. And it is then that the child who took off after the one with the carrot returns, triumphantly holding the carrot up high. She returns to Old Timer and sinks the carrot into his face. He grunts as she does this. Then the girl turns and looks across at me. She frowns, turning her head to the side. She mutters something and then walks forward. I've never known such fear, such dread. She's coming at me and I can't do anything about it. Trying desperately to shrink back, I close my eyes and wish I could at least scream. Her finger sinks into the front of my face. I can feel a painful warmth tearing into me. It's a burning sensation, incredibly intense. I feel as if my head is going to explode in a bright burst of white light. A scream, louder than the one Old Timer made a few minutes ago, rings in my head. It goes on, then Old Timer yells, "For Pete's sake, cut it out, would you?" The screaming is coming from me. I try to stop the noise, and sure enough, it stops. I open my eyes again to find the little girl smiling up at me. She wasn't hurting me intentionally. She was melting me a mouth. Thank you, I say to her, but she's oblivious to my words. She begins dancing around me and singing, but it makes no sense. She sings about a happy, jolly snowman. Her song confuses me. How the hell can a snowman be jolly with a life like this? Hey, I say to Old Timer, So, now you have a mouth. I know it must have hurt like a bugger, but it's good you can talk. Sammy said it was important for us to be able to talk. Why is that? I ask him. Because we have a legacy to pass along. We are created and then can do nothing about our existence. But if we can speak, then at least we can pass along stories to each other. So we have an oral tradition to uphold. We pass along speculative tales of what's to come. What's to come? What is he talking about? I have to ask. What happened to Sammy? He was torn apart, tortured, smashed to pieces by a gang of kids. It was horrible watching them do it, listening to his screams. It was, so far, the worst experience I've ever faced. Except, of course, for being completely alone these past 2 weeks. A muffled yell cuts through Old-Timer's speech. I look to see a group of kids approaching. The girl dancing around me runs in the opposite direction as the gang nears. I recognize the leader as the one who pulled Old-Timer's nose off. Here it comes, Old-Timer says. Finally, our salvation. Our salvation? What are you talking about? The first of the kids arrives, kicking a large chunk of snow from Old-Timer. A second kid starts throwing punches. A third kid tears into him, ripping away chunks of snow. All along, Old-Timer wails and screams. It's more terrible than he described. There's nothing I can do. I look about and see in the direction the girl ran a large group of kids coming. Hey, Old-Timer, I yell. Hang in there. It looks like help is on the way. He moans, help? No, I'm almost free. What the hell are you talking about? Punches and kicks send snow flying in all directions. Old-Timer speaks between screams, moans, and grunts. If you think this is a bad way to die. He cuts off for a moment, his voice drowned in an anguished wallow. What? I say, what can be worse? I can barely see him now through the flailing arms and legs. The little girl and her gang are getting close, yelling something. Will they arrive in time to save my friend? Before he died, Sammy told me about... Another wail comes out of him. The apocalypse. The apocalypse? Yes, the slowest, most painful death you can imagine. When everything melts. They call it spring. Just pray that you're not around. There's another long pause as he fights to summon up his last words. When spring comes. The second gang of kids arrive and quickly chase the others off with a barrage of snowballs and yells. But it is too late. When they clear the area, I can see Old-Timer. He's nothing now but a pile of snow with a few broken sticks and a scarf. He has found his salvation. The kids fuss over the pile of snow and then they turn their attention to me, long enough to add Old-Timer's scarf around my neck. They chat for a bit and then leave me to solitude. Time passes. I can't even cry. My eyes cast fervently across the fields of snow. My fear is that I'll spot some children off in the distance beginning the ritual of building another snowman. I don't think I can even bear to watch. I yearn for the mean kids to return to smash me down the way they destroyed Old-Timer. At least it was quick. I'm remembering when the girl melted me a mouth and how the burning sensation was the worst I had ever felt. I don't think I can even imagine what it'll be like when spring comes and I slowly melt down to nothing. Now, all I can do is sit here and wait and wonder if the torture of melting will be much worse than the agony of knowing now that spring is inevitable. And that's the end of the story. Yes, in this story, spring is inevitable, and that's a terror and torture for our poor friend Frosty. Here in my part of the world in Waterloo, Ontario, spring is not inevitable. Apparently, winter is inevitable, an unrelenting winter that I can see out the window. But that was a story from One Hand Screaming, and it initially appeared in, and of course I have to consult my notes because I can't remember. I think it appeared in a Canadian magazine called Strange Wonderland #1, which came out in March 1997. And if I had prepared, I might have even grabbed a copy of that to show you. Of course, there it is. Yeah, look at this. Not prepared, but at least I had it on the bookshelf beside me. So it appeared in this Canadian small press magazine. That was a lot of fun. And again, the thought was, I loved Frosty the Snowman. I loved the stories. I loved the concept of it, but I always wondered, well, if he came to life, where did the legs come from? I know there was magic involved, but I can only suspend my disbelief so far. What if he came to life and was just alive and stuck there? And then I thought back to Frankenstein's monster and how the moral message behind this story that Mary Shelley wrote was about humans daring to play God, humans daring to create other creatures. And I kind of contrasted that with having pets and breeding animals just to eat and all the horrible things that we do as humans. What would that perspective be like from the point of view of a snowman? And so that's the genesis of the story. That old silk hat they found, which obviously the title conjures up something from the song. And I wasn't done with snowman stories. I've actually written 2 other ones. The other one, like this one, was dark humor, a little bit more scary. And it was interesting to see. I wanted to do the same concept again, but this one, and it appears in the free download that you can get, it's Snowman Shivers. It's called The Ides of March, and again, talks about spring. And it's about a couple snowmen who are trying to rescue other snowmen. They capture and rescue. They actually steal snowmen on their mission to save them. And it was actually based on a news article I'd heard where somebody actually shot someone else and stole their snowman. This was back in the 90s. I'd heard that on probably on CBC radio. And so I thought I'd play with the same idea in a different sort of format story. And I have Ides of March. And so that, again, is another dark humor story. The third snowman story that I wrote appeared in Fiction River anthology Sparks, which was edited by Rebecca Mista. And that was a YA story. And it was actually a YA story about teen suicide. Rebecca's call for stories was to include stories that may start dark but end on a positive note. And I thought I wanted to approach a sentient snowman story again, but I wanted it to be hopeful. And I wanted to go from this dark place to find some sort of redemption. And it's actually one of my favorite short stories. It was published in Fiction River Sparks, which is available in digital and in print format. So thank you guys for hanging out. I've seen some of the comments there. Promethean reference. Thanks, Adrian. That's awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for the story. 2 inches of snow so far in Seaforth. That's really, really cool. Thank you. You enjoyed the premise. If there are any questions that you guys have, I'm more than willing to answer the questions. I'll just keep an eye open for any of them that pop up. Fill her up. Fill her up is a reference to, oh, that's your last name. Sorry, that's a heart you said. My apologies, Adrian. That was a heart, probably because I called out the Promethean reference, and I think I'm not really good at, there it is. There it is. I'm not really good at showing the comments on the screen. 2 inches of snow so far in Seaforth. So I guess, Elizabeth, in Seaforth, the snowmen are still safe, at least for a little while. I want to thank you guys for listening, watching the reading. I hope you enjoyed the free storytelling. Again, this is kind of a little bit different because I'm not as used to doing readings like this as I am to doing them live in person. So when you're doing them live in person, you know, there's certain moments in that particular story, because this was a popular crowd pleaser that I regularly do. I've even done it at some schools. Is you can get the reaction. You hear the titters and the giggles and the gasps sometimes, and so that's really, really fun. So it's really, really different doing it in front of a camera as opposed to in front of a live audience, because even sometimes, not that there's that much laughter in the story, but sometimes you want to pause let them catch their breath, and then move on. And it's really, really difficult to gauge the reaction of the folks. But again, thank you guys so much. I love the fact that you left some comments, and I hope you had a wonderful time. I hope if you are stuck in a snowy part of the world right now, that the thought of spring maybe brought you a little bit of warmth, because it may not be good for snowmen, but for the rest of us who aren't so fond of the chilliness, spring is a wonderful time of year. Thanks for hanging out with me during this free Friday Frights. Next week, I'm going to be doing a nonfiction one. It's going to be nonfiction based on some of the research I've done for some of my several nonfiction true ghost story books. It'll be an original article that I write based on the same research. And instead of reading, I'm just going to talk about it and, of course, answer questions maybe about that particular location or that subject matter. Thanks for hanging out with me on this free Friday Fright Friday. If you want to read Free Friday Frights, check them out at markleslie.ca/Free Friday Frights. Take care, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend.